Hello and welcome to Zeitgeist, where we talk about the psychology of the era, the science of games. I am your host, Dr. Rachel Kowert, and on today's episode of Academic Ramblings, we're going to talk about open science. You might also notice that my office is kind of empty behind me, and that's because I'm currently moving spaces, but this is the only time I had to record, so just pretend it looks beautiful and nerdy back there. Open science may be a term that you've heard before, as it's part of a bigger movement that has been growing over the last several years to make science more transparent, especially within psychology. Open science is the idea that researchers make their theories, methods, data collection, and hypotheses pre-registered, and their findings publicly accessible through open access publications. So there are two components here, pre-registration and open access publishing. Let's tackle them one at a time, starting with pre-registration. Pre-registration is the practice of registering a scientific study before it is conducted. The pre-registration of studies can help prevent publication bias, reduce data phishing, and identify otherwise undisclosed bad scientific practice. Why do we need pre-registration, you ask? Over the last decade, there's really been a push for more transparent methods on behalf of researchers spawned by the replicability crisis in psychology. That's going to be fun this whole video. A replication is the process of repeating research to determine the extent to which findings generalize across time and across situations and across populations. The replication of findings is one of the hallmarks of science. Scientists must be able to replicate the results of the studies or their findings do not become part of scientific knowledge. Replication protects against false positives and it increases confidence that the result actually exists. The replicability crisis refers to the fact that people started realizing there were major papers in the field of psychology that were not replicable by other researchers. That is, when they used the same methods and similar participant pools, they could not replicate the results. The crisis started around 2010 when a paper using completely accepted experimental methods was published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, reporting to find evidence that people were capable of perceiving the future, or had ESP, which is largely disputed as scientifically impossible. This prompted a reckoning. Common practices like drawing on small samples of college students were found to be insufficient to find true experimental effects, breaking the long-held assumptions that if you found a significant effect in a small amount of people, then it must be robust and generalizable to larger populations. Turns out that a lot of statistically significant results from small samples are statistical flukes, and they're not able to replicate. This crisis intensified in 2015 when a group of psychologists published a report in Science. If you don't know, Science is a very highly respected academic journal, really hard to get published in, right up there with Nature, with evidence of an overarching problem. When 270 psychologists tried to replicate 100 experiments published in top journals, only 40% of the studies held up. The rest either failed or yielded inconclusive data. In 2018, a team of social scientists, psychologists, economists, etc. attempted to replicate 21 findings published in the most prestigious general science journals, Science and Nature. Some of the retested studies had been highly influential in science as a whole, including papers on whether access to search engines hinders our memories and whether reading books improves a child's theory of mind, or their ability to understand that other people have thoughts and intentions different from their own. The scientists who ran the 21 replication tests didn't just repeat the original experiments, they actually made them more robust. In some cases, they increased the number of participants by a factor of 5. They pre-registered their studies and analyses before a single participant was brought into the lab. All the original authors, save for the one group that couldn't be reached, signed off on the study designs as well. Here are the results. Only 13 of the 21 replicated. Perhaps just as notable, even among the ones that did replicate, the effect sizes, that is the differences between the experimental group and the control group, the magnitude of the effect that you're measuring, decreased by around half. This means that the original findings overstated the power of the experimental manipulation. It overstated the power of the findings of the relationship. Felix Holzmeister, an Austrian economist and one of the study's co-authors, says, quote, "Overall, our study shows statistically significant scientific findings should be interpreted rather cautiously until they have been replicated, even if they have been published in one of the most renowned journals." A 2015 open science collaboration project led by the University of Virginia psychologist Brian Nosek noted, quote, "Clearly there's a very large problem when only about 1/3 of psychological studies in premier journals replicate. It appears that this problem is particularly pronounced for social psychology, but even the 53% replication level of cognitive psychology is cause for concern." Now, it's not always clear why things don't replicate. It could be that it was a false positive. It could be that the effects don't sustain over time. It could be that the original research was done sloppily, or it could be that the results were falsified, which is like the biggest crime in science. What the replicability crisis did, told you that word would be fun the whole time, but science changed a lot of the standard scientific methods and procedures, was it led to a larger movement to more transparency for researchers' methods, analyses, and predictions. Today, the Center for Open Science provides a platform for you to specify your research plan in advance of data collection and improve the quality and transparency of research. One other key point about pre-registration is that it helps dissuade what is often referred to in academia as data fishing, which is you collect your data and then look for a significant result within it, rather than only looking for the findings that you would have theoretically predicted. Data fishing happens for a lot of reasons. There is a saying in academia, publish or perish. There is a lot of pressure to publish, and journals don't like to publish non-significant results. Data fishing is not just an ethical problem, but a problem with maintaining the integrity of the scientific discipline itself. And pre-registration helps prevent this kind of data fishing by allowing researchers to pre-register their predicted hypotheses. Then we have the other component of open science: open access publication. If you've ever tried to access a scientific article, you've probably found yourself reading the abstract and thinking, hey, this looks good. And then you go to access the full text and you're hit with a paywall asking for $20, $50, $100 for a single article, which, by the way, most researchers do not get paid to publish articles. Open access publication removes this paywall and lets anyone access the publications within their journal. For example, Frontiers in psychology, Frontiers in biology, Frontiers in every topic under the sun, is an open access journal, one that I actually just published a special issue on games and mental health if you're interested. It's open access. But open access, while it's great in that it helps spread information more widely by removing the paywall, doesn't mean it's free. The payment has to come from somewhere, which is where we get into a little gray area of pay to publish. I am generally not a fan of pay to publish. The labor researchers put into conducting research, writing, and publishing is one that isn't often paid, apart from their salary that they receive or a particular grant that they might be working under. So asking us to pay to publish seems a bit shit. Now, in the case of Frontiers, they do have institutional membership, so the universities pay a yearly fee so the individual researchers don't have to. And they also offer different degree of fee waivers for those who cannot pay. But for the vast majority, the money to publish has to come from researchers, from their grant, from departmental funds, or from their own pocket. And for many, this can be an insurmountable barrier to publish this way. So that's something that needs to be considered before we all go up in arms and say, why doesn't everyone publish in an open access journal? Money. That's why. Because scientists love for people to read their work. I assure you, we would all love to publish in open access journals. It's always money. The inevitable follow-up question, why publish in a journal at all? Why don't you just publish your results on a Medium article and save yourself the financial headache? The primary reason is peer review. Journal articles provide peer review system, so your work is assessed and evaluated by peers in your field. That is also not paid work. This helps ensure the data is high quality, the analyses are reliable, and the results are novel and interesting. And this helps maintain a quality of publications in any particular research field and is key from sifting the good from the not so good. Peer review is also key to scientific integrity. So in this sense, journals provide an extra validation to the work. This isn't to say good articles can't be published on Medium. There's a few. But if you're using them as your source for scientific information, you should try and find an article published in a journal to further validate what you're reading. So let's review. Open science is the idea that researchers' work should be pre-registered and published in an open access journal. Why is open science good? Because it reduces data fishing. It also helps with the replicability crisis that social science and specifically psychology suffers from. It makes science more accessible. There are no paywalls to get through in order to access the written documents. However, money is an issue. If you like this video and you want to see more, please like and subscribe. And until next time, be excellent to each other and always cite your sources.